Good morning. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Centennial. Morning. Mary Alice, will you start us with our inspiration this morning? I don't think you're on.
It's on.
There's a gray power button.
New microphone.
Life is meant to be lived. No excuses, no reservations, no holding back. An enchanted story about violinist Fritz Kreitzer tells how he once came across a beautiful instrument and wanted to acquire it. When he finally raised the money for the violin, he returned to buy it and learned that it had already been sold to a collector. He went to the new owner's home in order to try to persuade him to sell the violin, but the collector said it was one of his prized possessions and he couldn't let it go. The disappointed Kreitzer turned to leave, but then asked a favor. "May I play the instrument once before it's consigned to silence?" Permission was granted, and the great musician began to play. The violin sang out a quality of music so beautiful that the collector himself could only listen in wonderment. "I have no right to keep that to myself," he said, after the music finished. "The violin is yours, Mr. Kreitzer. Take it into the world and let people hear it." William Arthur Ward said, "If you believe in prayer, pray. If you believe in serving, serve. If you believe in giving, give. For you and I are exquisite violins. Our music is meant to be heard." I want to live my life that way, to take it into the world, to live it fully. I'd rather burn out than rust out. I'd rather be used up than die not having done whatever I could, whatever I would. I'm not talking about wearing ourselves out over activity. Happiness is never found in excessive busyness, but it is found in investing our lives in others, saying yes when asked for a hand, volunteering some time for a worthwhile organization, spending an hour with a lonely relative. In the end, I know that my happiness will not have been about my ability or my inability. It will have been about my availability. My life is meant to be lived. Steve Goodyear.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Mark Gale, please lead us in the pledge.
I'm a little shy, so I've asked Vern to lead the pledge.
I hereby delegate it to Mark.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Of all the duties to shirk, my gosh. Tim Eunice, you have a Rotary minute, sir. Well, make something up.
I'll make something up.
You can always have Kent do it. Kent.
right in here.
Kent. Rotary minute.
He always has something in his back pocket.
That could be your Rotary
Could
minute
be your
if
Rotary
you prefer.
Tell us about gift cards, Ken.
No, I was reminded.
The other day, in the back seat of my car is a plaque that my mother-in-law gave me when we moved her out of her house down to Colorado Springs a few years ago. And I've brought this plaque in before, but I thought I'd bring it up again today. This plaque was given to her father, who is an active member of the Clear Lake, Iowa Rotary Club for over 40 years. And he left the Rotary Club in 1959. And because he sold his business in Clear Lake and ended up moving and retiring down in Sun City, Arizona. And it was dedicated to Roy Peterson on 40 years of service to the Clear Lake Rotary Club. And I'm always, my mother-in-law gave that to me because she knew of my involvement in Rotary. And she said, I don't need it, and you might as well have it. And I've kept it because to me, it just exemplifies the type of service that we all should carry on with as Rotarians. So just a reminder that this has been going on for a long time, folks. Rotary's been around and active, and that happened to be 2 years after I was born, and he was active member of that club for a very long time. So anyway, Rotary is, again, service above self, and it's great when people recognize that you have served your clubs. So that's your Rotary Minute.
Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it.
Tim, you're doing it next week.
Do not sign up, Kent, for that. Brett, we have a business minute this morning. You got a mic. Get a mic.
So I don't have a PowerPoint, so I figured I didn't want to go over the 45 minutes you allotted me. So I wanted to respect your time.
You'll get the hook much quicker.
It's called Rotary Business Minute.
What?
Come on up here. Get in front of the camera.
15 seconds. Time's up.
All right. For those less familiar, my name is Brad Hablitzel. My night job is I'm a father of a 4-year-old rugrat and a husband. But by day, I sell confidence. And you're probably wondering, well, what do you mean you sell confidence? That sounds a little cheesy. Well, what I mean by that is that rather than focusing on investments and performance, I provide confidence to retirees or people that are within 5 years of it by not focusing on investments or returns, but by focusing on the things that you can control, like taxes and fees and risk, in order to maximize your chances of success for whatever is most important to you, whether that's never running out of money or maximizing your estate for your heirs or making sure you're okay if something happens to your spouse or vice versa. So I left a folder on your tables here and one in the back if you want to grab one. So I guess I'll reduce this 45-minute speech down to a couple minutes so you can just read through this. But inside this folder, it tells you most of what you would need to know. But the biggest thing I want you to take away from what I'm telling you today is that the most profitable thing that you can ever do is just be open-minded. Most of the value that I provide folks, they never even see coming. You know, whether it's my client Andy, who came to me at 57 years old and had a couple of pensions in his back pocket. Turns out one of his pensions, he always was told, you know, take it at age 62, take it at age 62. But once we reviewed it, we realized that there was no growth between 57 and 62, and he could start taking it now. And so that extra 5 years of income before he retired added up to an extra $45,000 over that year. You know, the average Social Security review adds an extra about $12,000 over their lifetime. And so just keep an open mind. The biggest thing I'd like to invite you to do is just meet with me for an hour. And most people that do say it's the greatest conversation they've ever had about money in less than an hour. And so now 3 of you have met with me in the past, and all 3 of you have decided to move forward with me as a result. And so I can't promise you results. I can't promise you anything other than I'll try my best to help. I promise never to make you regret meeting with me, and I promise to never put any pressure on you. So inside the folder, you'll see a little bit about our process. The process is very simple. You meet with me for an hour, and that's just the get-to-know-you meeting. It's very casual. You don't have to bring anything to it. And then by the second meeting, you're already getting my suggestions and presentation. And what I do for folks is that for every person that does meet with me, I give them a copy of our Go Tax Free book. And also, if I can't show you $1,000 in savings in just those 2 meetings, I promise to donate $100 in your name to the charity of your choice. That's how confident I am I can show you money. So thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you, Brett. Still less time than Randy Pie. Very nice.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you to our custodians, Paul and Phil, for setting up. Thank you, David, in advance for taking down. Our greeter this morning was Karen Fleck. Appreciate it, Karen. Thank you. Yeah, Karen. Let's see. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? It does not look like it. We do have 2 guests this morning. I'm sorry. Yes, a guest. We have a guest, Ken Mackasay. Ken, thank you very much for joining us. Is that Ken? Would you like to tell us what brought you here this morning? Put you on the spot.
So it's actually Kevin.
You know what? It says Kevin too.
So everyone's going to call me Ken for the rest of my time in this club,
Kevin.
I guess.
Well, yeah. Ask Bruce about that.
Okay. I was in the Highlands Ranch Rotary for about 5 years. They meet on Thursday afternoon, and it's like a 10-hour lunch. So I'd rather meet in the morning and be on with my day. So
we're out by 8:30 every day.
Yeah, and so I know Andrea from CASA, Andrea Tagtow, who's in your group. So she's the one who invited me down here, and I'm in Highlands Ranch. I run a real estate and property management company.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. Thank you very much. We also have our speaker, Gail Lindley, and we'll introduce her further, in more detail later on. But thank you, Gail, for joining us this morning. Let's see. We have a couple birthdays. Jay Weber. Is Jay here this morning?
No.
No? Oh, all right. And Tom Buck, also not here this morning. Ooh, thank you. No anniversaries. Let's go to travel gifts.
Okay.
Diane.
Oh, and these are my, really? As loud as I am? So Trilogy Financial, the financial planning firm I'm with, we have an annual meeting, and it was in Huntington Beach this year, and I picked up this, well, my mom picked this up for you guys. It's this cute little crab with little stained glass on the front, and it was so adorable, and it almost didn't make it through security. Not quite sure why, but anyways, it's very, very cute.
That's what all bombs look like now.
Yeah, the wine didn't make it home because I drank it, but this made it home, so it was very fun.
All right. Thank you, Diane. Ann West is collecting those for us.
Give her the gift.
Give me the gift. I'll take it.
Excellent. Any other travel gifts? No? You will notice that John Barry, I'm a slightly smaller version of John Barry. He is not here. He is living up to his civic duties this morning. So I'm sure we'll join Karen in praying he doesn't get jury duty because John doesn't get paid if he's not working. So let's see. We do have a Blue Badge Award recipient this morning. If we could have Patrick McGuire and his mentor, John Peterson, come and stand in front of the camera. I will try to repeat that.
Boy, that was a fast track.
Right here, right in front of the camera. All right. Yeah, here's your handy blue badge. You have to smile for the picture. But oh, wow, big camera. Big camera, little camera. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
You were on the fast track. You have a fantastic mentor who's shown you the ropes. Now you're on your own.
I almost didn't make it because I didn't show up for the greeting.
Oh, yes.
I shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah. We'll let you slide this time, Patrick. Thank you. Good job. All right. We recently received notice from the Rotary Club of Arvada regarding the 22nd annual Flower Power event down at the Colorado Home and Garden Show. As you'll recall, the Home and Garden Show donates its leftover plants and flowers. We take those to local nursing homes the Monday morning after the Home and Garden Show is over. There's usually a boxing up that Sunday night. Do I have the dates? Goes to, so it must be March 4th, and then the delivery would be the morning of March 5th. Last year, Byron Cost was our coordinator, and he has unfortunately moved. So we would need a new coordinator. Anybody interested off the top of their heads? Otherwise, you will be selected by John Barry in some future point. No? Okay. All right. Don't all raise your hands at once. Okay. Well, keep that in mind. It's not a lot to coordinate, and it's a pretty good time. John Peterson has been tantalizing you with his Manzanillo slideshow and has a couple minutes on that topic.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, so as you all know, we have this project going on. We're going down to Manzanillo and having some really rewarding times with some of the kids, getting to know them and doing some outreach. And we'll be staying at the Las Brisas here that you see in the pictures. But anyway, right now we've got 8 people going, and we've got room for more, and we'd love to have you. So is there anybody that has any questions as far as what we're doing or what's involved? Okay, fine, be that way. Anyway, we'd love to have any of you go that have time to go and want to do it. So please let us know.
Thank you, John. Let's see. There is an organizational meeting for the Manzanillo trip after next week's meeting. Is that right, John? Yes. Okay. So right after this meeting, if you are going or have questions about it in any way, please stick around and meet with everyone else who is going. Karen Berry, you didn't know I was going to call on you, but do you want to tell us about the President's Dinner? Too bad.
So John and I attended the President's Dinner, which was very nice. They did have, besides the President speaking, they also had a speaker from the Gates Foundation to talk about polio and their pursuit of that. So it was very interesting. There was a gentleman that was awarded an award who's worked a lot with the Polio Plus, and I think he's the one that wrote a book that they mentioned. And so I've ordered the book, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to encourage everybody else to read it if I think it's good and has a good message. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Then you'll see Karen brought back from the President's Dinner these flyers on your table. They're for the district conference. Last year we were promised that the district conference would be easier to get to, cheaper, and shorter. So it's a great time. You will learn a lot about what other clubs are doing, meet a lot of other Rotarians, and generally have a good time. So if you are at all interested, there's a flyer on your table, and I'd encourage you to go. Yes, sir.
On the
microphone, sir.
On the district celebration, they're doing something new this year. They're going to have a kind of a business fair. So anybody who has a business, I'm not quite sure if there's going to be I'm learning about this, whether or not there's going to be a fee to do that, but instead of just strictly limited to Rotary projects, each individual will have an opportunity to have a booth or table kind of promoting your own business among Rotarians. So as I get more information about that, I'll certainly pass it on to you.
Mm-hmm.
Also for the district conference, the Santa Claus Project will be having a table, and we will be mass communicating and handing out Santa in a hat to expose this wonderful project to all the different clubs. The Santa Claus kickoff meeting is February, so we can prepare for this, and then so we can be well in advance. If any of you are interested in being on that committee, we already have 6 people, about 1 or 2 per club. But we would always welcome more people to sit in and get involved. Let me know.
Is that going to be our House of Friendship booth, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know I'm going to be there.
All right.
So who do I need to talk to organize that?
John Berry.
John Berry.
Not me, most importantly. I mean, and you really do, last year is where I met, shoot, now I can't remember her name. I bet, shocking. What's the Gems of Madagascar one? Michelle. Michelle's a member of the Longmont Club, and that's where I met her. And I think, just those relationships and getting to know people are always helpful. And it's great to see what other clubs are doing. They have kind of in addition to all the awards and things like that, they do have a kind of a project showcase. And, even if those particular projects aren't for you or our club, they always do help generate ideas and interest. Let's see. The Global Grant Seminar is coming up January 20th from 12:30 to 4 o'clock. Our club would love to send somebody who is interested in learning more about the global grant process, which seems to be an ever-evolving and changing landscape. If anyone is interested, please contact John Barry. Our club does pay the fee for that. It is January 20th, 12:30 to 4 o'clock, a mere 3.5 hours, which for anything Rotary related is relatively short. I don't know. It's usually up at Red Rocks. I don't know where that's going to be. But if you're interested, please let us know. Our club does apply for global grants, and I assume we will continue to apply for global grant with our Madagascar project. We would love to have somebody who can help facilitate that process with Catherine. And let's see. Next week's meeting is our club assembly. If you are a chairperson for your club committee, please prepare accordingly. I'm not sure what that means, but do that and be ready to lead your meeting. Karen Berry looks like she has something to say.
Yeah. So since I didn't know I was going to be called on about the President's Dinner, I had taken a couple of pictures of things that they had up on the screen. One was something when Rachel from the Gates Foundation was talking, and it said, in 1988, there were 20 children paralyzed by the wild polio virus every half hour. In 2017, there were 20 cases total. So that's pretty amazing. They also had some awards that they showed up on the screen. One was Polio Make History Today Certificate of Appreciation, and our club was one of the many clubs that met that $1,500 minimum club contribution. And we were one of 5 clubs that received the Presidential Citation for 2016-2017. So pretty awesome.
Good. 5 clubs out of how many? It's a lot. I don't know how many. Do you know how many, Mark? Are in our district? Do you know how many clubs are in our district?
Not 60. 250.
Nice. All right. Well, excellent. Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. And Mary Alice, do you want to provide a quick Prime Timers update? What is going on this week or next?
The main thing is our movie is tomorrow. It is the Treasures of Sierra Madre with Humphrey Bogart, yes. Is it black and white? We're curious.
Oh, yes.
We think maybe it is still. So anyway, we'd love to have you come. We go about 3:30 to the Coble, thank you, library, and watch the movie there in their theater. It's a 40-person theater with theater seating, and it's a wonderful place to watch a movie. And then when the movie's over, we go across the street to Panera and all have dinner together. So it's a fun time. Everything's free except your dinner, which you pick up yourself. So anyway, come join us.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
Mary Ellen's going to pick up dinner.
All right. Any other announcements or club business? Yes, Samantha.
All right. So save the date, January 27th at 9 a.m. at the Heritage Eagle Bend. We will be having a drug collection and opioid education event. So we are having Dr. Robert Valek and Terry Malik speak. So that'll be about 60 minutes. The drug collection will start at 8:30 and go until about 11 probably, or until the officers are no longer there. So that's up to them apparently. But we will be having sign-up sheets come around through email. Jessica Reagan is part of that. We'd really love to have, a huge representation from this club there. So if you can make it to attend. Now, Dr. Valek will be coming to speak the following Tuesday as well. So just so you all are aware of that. But if you have some drugs, whether they're prescription, over-the-counter, expired, no longer used, please feel free to bring them and turn them in, because that's what it's there for. So if you have any questions, let me know, and Jessica will be emailing you this week. At least that's what she told me, so look for that email.
Say the date one more time.
January 27th. It's a Saturday.
Morning.
If you're on the committee, you need to be there at 8, right?
What's 8:30?
All right, and that's, of course, in furtherance of our opioid epidemic commitment for the year and beyond. And I do think, Nora and I recently actually recycled all of our prescription drugs and other drugs like that were in our house. As our boy gets older, it's just a concern what kind of stuff is in your house. But they're also pollutants, so even if they're not opioids, it's good to get them out of the house. You don't want them in landfills and stuff like that. Sure.
Thank you, Samantha, for that introduction of Dr. Valak. I want to encourage everybody to come. His topic is not listed here, but he is going to be speaking on opioid addiction in the state of Colorado. He is one of the renowned speakers on that topic in the state of Colorado. He will be bringing a lot of awareness to our club that day as to what is going on and how vast this epidemic is. So I encourage you to bring a guest with you that day. I think that'll be very important. And our club is focused 4 times this year on bringing somebody who has been affected or what we can do about the opioid addiction here in Colorado. So Jeannie and I are bringing 4 speakers this year to the club on that topic. Next week, I want to call your attention, 2 weeks, we're going to have Stephanie Pico, who is our new mayor for the city of Centennial. She'll be coming. And then Dr. Arthur Ortegon with Comcast. Just to give you an idea, when we put our programs together, Jeannie and I focus on 4 specific categories. Each month we try to bring a Centennial business to you. Another week in the month we try to bring an inspirational speaker. The third week we try to bring an awareness, a community awareness, where something is going on in the community, and that would be like the opioid addiction. And then another week we bring Rotary Club business, whether it's a club assembly, foundation report, etc. So that's how we bring speakers here to the club. And if you have anybody that you would like to recommend to us, please let us know, because we are always looking for speakers. And we book way out in advance, and that's so I could keep my schedule free. But we would welcome any suggestions, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. All right. Any other club announcements or club business? No? All right. Vern Hansen, you're up for Happy Bucks. You cannot pawn this. Well, sure you can. You can pawn it back on Mark Gale if you like.
I should try, but I won't stoop to that. No, I'm sorry. Happy Bucks. I'll start it off, even though, truthfully, we need the rain. I'm very happy for the nice weather we've had, and happy that we're not suffering through what the folks on the East Coast are suffering through this week. So, this table.
I just got I got a happy buck just because I'm happy, and I'm sitting next to Mark Gale today, and it's just wonderful.
He's taking notes and checking it twice. Anybody else with this? Okay, here we go.
I'm just so glad I was able to sit here with Phil today.
What am I telling
Okay. I don't see any money in your hand. Okay, no money, no play. Okay, who's got the IOUs? I don't have them.
David's got them.
I got a unhappy dollar. I did not win Powerball or a Mega Millions. Sorry, Barb.
Anybody else here? Let's go up to this table. Happy.
I have 10 happy bucks. Today is the first day of the next semester for high school for my kids. Yay! Which is great. I had a really great meeting with my cohorts in California, and just being able to spend time where it was so cold, air quotes, at 65 in California. And another part of the dollars just goes towards all these projects that are going on. A lot of you are putting in a lot of time and energy into these projects, and I just think all of us taking a minute to step out and see which projects we want to get involved in. But the Manzanillo trip and all the other projects, very, very cool. So just happy to be here.
Thank you. Anybody else happy? Here we go.
Good morning. I've been gone a little while because I've been ill, and I am absolutely delighted to be back with my Rotary friends. Thank you.
You're welcome. Glad to have you back. John.
I have two, one for our guest, Kevin. Thank you for coming, and one for Patrick here for becoming one of us for sure. Thank you.
Patrick.
I've got two happy bucks. One that I got my blue badge today, and the other one that I'm no longer living in New Jersey or no longer living in Michigan because of the weather. Thank you.
Thank you. Here, Jeannie.
Well, I'm glad to be back too because I've had what Cheryl had, and that's not fun. So I'm just delighted it's gone and having more fun planning this wedding.
Oh my gosh.
Anybody else here? Okay, over here.
Well, this isn't really a happy buck, but it's a buck for our new member, Yenny. She's got pneumonia, which is why she hasn't been here. So she anticipates being back next week. So, yay.
Good, good. There is one.
Happy buck to have Patrick McGuire in our club. He was a wonderful person to mentor, and I enjoyed every minute I spent with him.
And a fine job you did with him. Who else? Ann?
This is for the excuse me, the 24 hours I spent with my husband celebrating our celebrating our 27th anniversary. We ended up going to the King and I, which if you haven't please go if you can get a ticket. He got one at the last minute. Center Orchestra.
Nice. Anybody else? Okay, table number 4, or whatever you are.
I just have one happy dollar. I went to warm Florida and picked up a nice sinus infection.
For a travel gift?
I've got two. I want to welcome Kevin, who hopefully he will join our club. My husband, John, is the president who's on jury duty today, but we live in Highlands Ranch as well, so we're kind of neighbors. So hopefully we'll be neighbor Rotarians. The second one is the countdown, 40 days till Daytona 500 and NASCAR season. And I'm looking forward to, we are going to Manzanilla, and on the way back, we're coming through Las Vegas so I can visit my son, but we're also catching a NASCAR race too.
It's your microphone. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, way over here.
I have a dollar for John McCarty's presentation last week on Madagascar. It was great, very informative, and hopefully he can do it again for us.
Okay, happy back here.
Hi, I have one. I wasn't here last week because I was coming back from Breckenridge with my brother, sister-in-law, and nephew who live in San Diego. So I got to see my 8-year-old nephew, and I only get to see him like once a year. So that was great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Trip.
I've got two, but the first one is as membership director, I wanted to welcome Kevin, and I should have introduced Randy as the membership obstacle. He makes it hard for me to keep members. And the second, I'm subsidizing Jacqueline because everybody welcome her back. She's her husband just took a job up in Leadville as a police officer, which I think is kind of coincidental that our speaker is the subject is law enforcement in Leadville. Thank you.
We have a late arrival here who wants to say something.
Obviously. So good morning. I'll do an IOU, but I'm going to do 5 happy bucks. One, it's great to be back and happy 2018. Number 2, my 2018 started off with a bang. Last Friday I was announced that my division's being sold. So my options are either take a severance, enjoy planning a wedding and find a house, or the other unfortunate one, which I heard yesterday, which is that I'm probably going to get hired on. So darn, no bonbons on the couch anytime soon for me. But I'm really grateful for that. And then I had a great trip to Oregon. I'm excited for you. I got it all prepped for you guys when you go. But we went to the Evergreen Air and Space Museum, which if you've never been, go to in McMinnville. They have the Spruce Goose, which was really cool to see. They also have a lot of interesting military aircraft, and again, going around with an Air Force guy. He's like, oh yeah, I flew with that, and that was this, and I was like, whatever. The other thing was that they have one of the Titan rockets, and it was really cool because Eric's uncle Warren worked at Lockheed Martin on the Titan, so that was cool. But my travel gifts, I bought 2 books. FUBAR, which everybody should understand what FUBAR is, and it's soldier slang of World War II, so if you're a World War II buff, it's kind of fun. And then Rosie's Riveting Recipes. So fun gifts there. And who's in charge of travel gifts now? Oh, God.
Here's that. I've been to McMinnville twice in the last year to inspect properties that our credit union has financed. I didn't know they had an air museum up there.
Yeah, no, and for kids, it's a water park, and one of the 747s that Evergreen Air, that they own, they have a 747 sitting on top of the building, and you get to go in the 747 and fly out of the 747 down into the Ashford.
I'm going to sign up for that trip next year. Happy bucks up here. Front table. Front table.
I'm very happy. I'm thrilled that Gail accepted our invitation to come and speak today, so welcome.
Anybody else?
Me?
Anybody else that I missed before?
I got you.
Randy?
I got mine. You can, thank you. I have 3. First, welcome. Well, not welcome, but congrats to Patrick. Thanks for jumping in with both feet and knocking out all your blue badge requirements. Welcome to Kevin Mackesay, and my apologies for misstating your name. Welcome to Gail. Thank you again for joining us. And lastly is I had the pleasure of going to my brother's wedding. I won't say how many weddings this has been, but my brother's most recent wedding this weekend in Scottsdale. And before anyone is upset with me for having to spend the weekend in 80 degrees in Scottsdale, I have to go to Minneapolis this weekend. So it's going to be the polar opposite. I think it may be like as much as a 100-degree temperature swing. So that'll be awesome. So anyway, that's it for that. I neglected to pass around. My boy Eric did put together a thank you card for our club and its donations to his homeless pet toy and supply drive. A few pictures are on here. He got to meet some puppies and meet some boxers. And anyway, I'll pass that around. And with that, we will move on to our speaker. Cheryl, would you like to introduce Gail?
I'd be thrilled to do that. Gail Lindley. I probably should be in front of the camera. Gail Lindley is a Denver native. She is married to Don, a university professor at Regis University, and she has 2 daughters and 4 grandchildren. As a 3rd-generation bookbinder in a 5-generation business at Denver Bookbinding Company, she keeps busy with the daily operations. They're currently binding 30,000 copies of one book, and then to the other extreme, they're binding 3 Bibles from a family. And so you can have your bookbinding needs met at Gail's company. And she is also president of the Mile High Optimist Club that turned 100 years old in 2016. She is a Denver Police Reserve officer, and she's been doing that for the past 20 years in the patrol division. And in her earlier years, she raced showroom stock cars and was Mrs. Denver in 1996. So please welcome Gail.
All right, am I live? I am live. All right. All right, I'll tuck it in my favorite place. Well, seeing as part of my patrol was over on East Colfax, you do look familiar. Yeah. So I'm going to be passing around a few items. Now, they're from 1880. One of them is a six-shooter. So in my talk, I reference a six-shooter that Martin Duggan carried. And it is disabled, but if you are a gun person at all, you'll know that a six-shooter was not terribly accurate with their sights. Leg irons, start with him first. So yeah, I know that I'm not sure that the key works really well. So yeah, don't test it. In handcuffs from 1880. Couple pictures. Who's 5'5" here? 5'5". You just want to stand up for a point of reference? All right, that's 5'5". Thank you. Now you can sit down. I'm going to be passing around some pictures, and we're just going to do a slice of history. So this is from Leadville, and Molly May, everybody I talk about actually lived. Molly May, well, we'll just start. My name is Molly May. I was born in 1849 to German and Irish parents. When I grew older, I worked as a prostitute and a performer following the gold rush and the miners, and as their numbers increased, more towns sprung up, when even a whisper of gold was found. I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming for a while and went to Deadwood, South Dakota. I got into a fight with one of the girls, Fanny Crenshaw, who worked with me in the Gem Theater in Deadwood. This was over Fanny's husband, Banjo Brown, where during the fight, she ended up biting off part of my ear. I had already been in a shooting where, thankfully, the bullet that had been meant for one of my male friends, the bullet deflected off of one of my metal ribs in my corset and only left a mean bruise. I knew that it was time to leave Deadwood after that incident, and I left for Leadville, Colorado in 1878. Leadville reportedly had 5,000 people in 1877, and in 1878, there were over 30,000 people in the Cloud City. You could be walking down the street and meet up with Frank and Jesse James, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, the Dalton Boys, Bat Masterson, Tom Horn, and the Younger Gang. Others like Benjamin Guggenheim, David May, and Charles Betcher were just some of the business people attracted to Leadville to seek their fortunes off of the backs of miners. I did very well in Leadville and purchased my first house at 555 5th Street. I had 10 female boarders, another name for working girl, plus 2 handymen. I was just one of the 150 gambling and pleasure houses in the area. Horace Tabor became one of my silent partners, and he was really a good man to know. He had started off as a miner, and after striking it rich, became mayor. He was worth an estimated $10 million. If I was in his shoes, I would have wanted to hire the best lawman I could. Leadville was full of swindlers, gunslingers, and crooks from all walks of life. By 1878, Leadville had the reputation as one of the most lawless towns in the West. The first city marshal hired was run out of town, and within a few days of his appointment, and his replacement was shot and killed within the first month of his employment by one of his own deputies. Fearing the town would be lost to the lawless elements, Mayor Horace Tabor sent for Mart Duggan, who had already established his reputation as a gunslinger. At 5'5", with steely blue eyes, built like an ore wagon and tough as a boot, Mart arrived in Leadville in 1878. He was born in Ireland in 1848, and his family immigrated to New York City, where they lived in the slums when Mart was a child. His family decided to move from New York in 1861, and by 1863, Mart was on his own. He worked as a bouncer, a bartender, a miner, and a mule skinner. While working at the Occidental Hall and Saloon in Georgetown, Colorado, Mart was called out by a drunk that had been ousted out of the place by Duggan. Not one to avoid conflict, Duggan told him to meet him out on the streets where the local folk had already begun to line up on both sides of the street. The man drew his gun, but Mart was faster and killed him. The act was ruled as self-defense. Already rumored to have killed 6 men, Mayor Tabor offered $125 in silver to have Mart start as marshal in 1878. As comparison, the average weekly wage for 60 hours for a machinist was $15 and a laborer was $10. The average cost to visit a working girl was 50 cents. The cost to mail an envelope from Leadville to Denver was 50 cents before the train routes were established between Denver and Leadville. Marshal Duggan's first item of business was to fire all the deputies that he felt were too friendly towards the criminal elements. Death threats were sent to Duggan on his first day on the job, but it did not sway his commitment to the town. One of his first calls was to calm down rowdy miners in the Totine restaurant. He did this with 2 6-shooters, cocked, and the miners backed down. Mart walked into the magistrate's office and fired him. When the magistrate objected and stated that Duggan had no authority, Duggan pulled his gun and escorted the magistrate out of town. Duggan then handpicked a replacement, and together they held court for 6 days, passing down sentences. The disposed magistrate later apologized to Duggan, promising to do better. That was when Duggan returned him to his post. Although completely illegal and improper, Duggan's tactics were effective and tolerated by the townspeople. In late May 1878, Duggan arrested August Ritchie, one of the wealthiest men in Colorado, as being drunk and disorderly. When Ritchie resisted, Duggan beat him over the head with his pistol. Ritchie was a friend and a business partner of Tabor. Tabor came to the jail to protest the arrest and was told that Tabor himself would be arrested for interference if he didn't leave. Ritchie only got out of jail when Duggan felt it was time. In that same month, Duggan was called to the Pioneer Saloon on a disturbance in progress involving miners John Elkins, who was black, and Charlie Hines, who was white. They were quarreling over a poker game when Elkins pulled out a knife and stabbed Hines. Elkins then fled. 2 of Duggan's deputies arrested Elkins without incident, but the word had spread and racial tensions grew into a lynch mob. Duggan ran towards the jail, stood his ground, cocking a revolver in each hand, stating the first man who stepped forward would be shot. The mob, consisting of 100 or more, dispersed that night. Hines recovered from the attack. Elkins was found to have acted in self-defense, but fled town immediately after being released. As one of the town's businesswomen, I would see the marshal and his deputies around the 20th of each month when it was time to pay our business dues that were based on the class of your establishment. Fees were $15 per madam and $5 per working girl. If you were employed by a less classy sporting house, the fees were less. Sometimes I just forgot, and we'd be raided in pretty short order. These same fees consisted a large part of law enforcement wages. Duggan was dismissed from duty in February 1879 after a drinking binge, but was quickly reinstated when it became obvious no one else could do the job. In April 1879, when his appointment term had expired, he elected to leave the marshal's position and moved to Flint, Michigan with his wife. He was replaced by Pat Kelly, but Kelly lacked the abilities and raw aggression that Duggan possessed. Within months, Leadville had reverted to being a town controlled by thugs. Town council fired Kelly and sent for Duggan, who returned in December 1879 for the second time as marshal. He fired all of Kelly's deputies and hired his own men. He also arrested anyone he believed was causing problems. By April 1880, Leadville was under control again, and Duggan refused a reappointment. He was replaced by Ed Watson. Duggan has shown that he was not a man to do fool with. He was respected for his raw courage and direct, no-nonsense way of keeping the lid on the town. He had a swagger to his walk, was eager for a challenge. He was quick with his wits and his guns. He was fearless and could intimidate the roughs and cutthroats. Normally well-mannered and soft-spoken, Duggan could turn violent when drinking. The Leadville Evening Chronicle reported, sober, there was no more courteous, obliging person, but under the influence of liquor, he was the incarnation of deviltry and has little regard for human life as a wild beast. In April 1880, he opened a livery stable at 4th and Pine. It had appeared he had settled into domestic tranquility, but he was never too far from the action. A wage dispute in May 1880 resulted in a bitter strike when the mine operators rejected the miners' demands of a 25-cent per week raise and enlisted some local toughs to defend their interests. In June, Colorado Governor Pitkin ordered General Cook to Leadville to take charge. Cook was aware of the many members of his militia were in sympathy with the strikers. When he learned the miners and the militia sympathizers meeting in secret had hatched plans to attack their opponents and conducted general lynching, he called in the officers of the Tabor Tigers. This was a company composed of Leadville sporting men who made their living off of their wits, and had little sympathy for the problems of the hard rock miners. The officers included James Murphy and Lieutenant Mark Duggan. Cook directed them to hunt down and arrest the conspirators, militiamen, and miners alike. 200 were arrested, which cooled down the situation and helped lead to a nonviolent resolution of the strike. In November 1880, Duggan was dispatched to one of my competitors' houses on West 5th Street. I had sold my previous property to the city as a courthouse and purchased 129 to 131 West 5th Street, which was considerably larger. Winnie Purdy's girls had asked to be picked up in Duggan's sleigh, drawn by a pair of elegant black horses. Near the corner of 5th and Pine, a mining man named Lewis Lamb stepped into the street and was almost run over. Duggan and Lamb had quarreled in times past, and this incident triggered a new exchange of bitter words. Lamb ended up turning and walking away in silence. But now Duggan's temper was fully aroused and followed Lamb in his sleigh. By the time Lamb got in front of the Purdy house, Lamb had whirled around, demanding an apology. When Duggan refused, Lamb reached for his pistol and cocked it. But before he could fire, Duggan had jumped off the sleigh, pulled his gun, and with one round shot Lamb in the mouth that killed him instantly. Duggan turned himself in, and at hearing was cleared of claims of self-defense. Mindy Lamb, who later became my friend, considered the shooting of her husband unmitigated murder. She swore an undying hatred of the former marshal, vowing to wear her widow weeds until Duggan was dead, and she could present them to his widow. Widow weeds is the black mourning dress. She also said she would dance and piss on his grave when Duggan was dead. Although Duggan never received official punishment, he lost some of his popularity following the shooting, and as a result had to close his livery business in 1882. To pay his debts, he sold his house in Leadville and moved to Douglas City. He attended bar and wore a deputy's badge in the tent town approximately 14 miles out of Leadville by Hagerman's Pass. In 1887, several Douglas City dance hall girls were conned by a traveling salesman into buying fake jewelry. Duggan hunted him down, and when the man resisted, was worked over by Mart's big fists. The bloody man was marched back to the dance hall. Mart made him return all the money to the girls, plus buy a round of drinks for the house, before booting him out of town. This enhanced Duggan's popularity in Douglas City, but the salesman went to Leadville, found a magistrate, and filed charges for assault and robbery. Duggan appeared in court with a covey of dance hall girls. He was found innocent of the robbery charge, but was found guilty for the assault and charged $10 in court costs. Duggan flew into one of his famous rages, demanded the salesman pay the fine instead. This so frightened the salesman that he dropped all charges and fled town. Later that year, Duggan returned to Leadville as a police patrolman. In the decade since he had first come to Leadville, the community had advanced well beyond the wild frontier mining camp he had known, and now was a bustling city. Leadville was in the running for becoming the state capital, competing with Denver. The city had changed, but Duggan had not. He was always in trouble for being too heavy-handed. In March 1888, he resigned from the police force after having a complaint lodged against him by yet another jeweler, and Duggan refused to defend himself, resulting in a $25 fine. He went on a monumental drinking binge because Bailey Youngson, one of the owners from the Texas house, had taken a check from a Denver man for gambling losses at the bar. He hired Duggan to go to Denver and collect the cash from the gambler, since the check was no good, and promised to feed a Duggan. Duggan, with his usual tough approach, succeeded and returned to Leadville with $3,000. Youngson then reneged on his promise and refused to pay Duggan. Duggan was pretty broke at the time, and he started his efforts again to collect his fee. He was still carousing and quarrelsome 2 weeks later, and got into an argument with William Gordon, a dealer in the Texas house. Bailey Youngson intervened on behalf of his employee, and Duggan invited both of them out in the street to settle the dispute with 6 shooters. The gamblers declined. Friends tried to calm Duggan down and convinced him to go home. At about 4 in the morning on April 9th, Youngson confronted Duggan across the street from the Texas house at the Tivoli Saloon and asked him to come back to the Texas house and he would square things up. Actually, George Evans had been chosen to murder Duggan, and Youngson was setting Duggan up. Before Duggan could get into the Texas house, Evans came up from behind him, leveled his gun at Duggan's head, and pulled the trigger. Night patrolmen, hearing the shot, found Duggan lying in a pool of blood, unconscious but alive. Doctors were summoned to the Bradford drugstore where he had been moved, but could do nothing for him. His wife was called, and at dawn he opened his eyes momentarily, and he was asked who had shot him. He replied, Bailey Youngson, and lapsed into unconsciousness. He later revived and told officers it was one of the gang. When asked if it was Bailey Youngson, Duggan said no, and I'll die before I tell you. He died shortly at 11 a.m. that morning. Mindy Lamb was seen dancing on the blood-soaked sidewalk and presented Mrs. Duggan with her widow weeds. Duggan's body was brought to Denver and interred in Riverside Cemetery in an unmarked grave. We're going to fast forward to Denver 2005. When the caretaker of Riverside Cemetery and my husband, who was a sergeant at the time in District 2 in Denver, they discovered where Duggan was buried in an unmarked grave. As a respect for a fallen officer, it took 5 years to raise the money to put a headstone on the grave. When it was time to put the names on the gravestone, we found that there were 8 other people in the grave. It was his mother, his father, his brother, 2 sisters, plus 1 niece and 2 nephews. So that's what shows on the gravestone. The family's on the back, Duggan is on the front. So Molly's house still stands, and fittingly, it's a law office. April 11th, 1887, Molly died from neuralgia of the heart. Because she was well liked, she had one of the largest funerals that Leadville had seen, with 8 wagons following the horse-drawn hearse. She was buried in Leadville's Evergreen Cemetery in an unmarked grave, as per her request. This ends a slice of Colorado history. Questions? Any questions? So I'm assuming your husband's going to be making more than $125 a month. Texas house, a lot of Pioneer Saloon is still open and running. Again, Molly's house is still there. So he'll have a great time. It's a big historic place. And I was told that Bat Masterson used to be a reserve officer in Arapahoe County. So, anyway, thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. Oh, can you hang out for 1 second?
Oh, okay.
We have a couple of things. First, we donate books to a local elementary school, and we will put a book plate in recognition of your talk to us today, just like that.
Thank you.
So thanks very much. We also have a little raffle, if you wouldn't mind being our Vanna White.
Okay.
Read the last 3 numbers.
That's easy for you to say.
Oh.
111.
Paul Horiuchi. All right. Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome. You want this back?
That was great. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
People are disappointed by your win.
Thank you. I just have to make sure I get my
Clear. Clear. Oh, shucks.
Thank you.
Shucks. All right. Well, thanks again, Gail. Leadville, is such a great place. It feels like, living history when you're there still. We were there for Boom Days one year, and my father-in-law, I think it might have been his first trip to Colorado. We were there at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he was semi-assaulted by a local dude who was totally wasted, totally drunk. It was great. Felt like we were back in the 1800s. If you would please stand and join me in the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. Have a great week.